So here's ClearStream 4.1. This screen looks very similar to what you guys have seen in the past if you've used ClearStream 4.0 or prior. But I'm going to go ahead and actually set up a little demonstration with the virtual site survey tool to show you the features in action. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is actually configure a, let me do the environment first. So I'll go over to the virtual site survey. I'm going to configure a very simple environment. I'm just going to do a single room with a single reader and a single antenna. So let's put this thing, aim it here, and a single tag container. Okay, so now here's our environment. We got our RFID reader. We have an antenna hooked up. This thing's just aiming in some direction. And we have the item that we want to scan in the environment. So once this gets turned on, it should scan as it's going in and out of this read range here. Now, the first thing I thought I'd do is show you this in action without any of the tag events that are supported in ClearStream 4.1 and show you what happens. So I have here my my asset or my package that I want to scan. I have everything set up in my environment. I'm going to move this over for the time being and configure that reader to send tags to a database. So what I'll do is select the source to be RFID. I'm going to select the destination to be our ClearStream RFID sample database and send it to the RFID tag list table. And then just add my reader to this configuration. I'm going to go ahead and hit add an emulated reader. And the only thing I really want to do here is add an antenna to this emulated reader. So I'm all done here. I have a fixed RFID emulated reader hooked up. I'm using that as my source of tag data on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I have my RFID tag list table that I have configured. So any tag that's read by this emulated reader, which we just hooked up in our environment, is sent to the RFID tag list. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Call it 2017 webinar. By the way, Happy New Year, everyone. So go ahead and hit save my project. I have that saved. Now I have the database here open. This is the ClearStream RFID sample that's installed with ClearStream. It's an access database. You can see my RFID tag list table is empty. It has no tag information in it. And that's the table I'm sending tag information to. So let me go ahead and show you this. Now this is going to run as it would in ClearStream 4.0. If I hadn't set up anything on the database side, and if I have the reader set to a simple append mode. So I'm going to go ahead and start the reader. When I start the reader, you'll see that the read zone goes green. Now again, I have no tags in my access database. There's nothing in here. So I'm going to go ahead now and move the item into the read zone of this RFID tag and this RFID reader. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of activity going on in the background. It's scanning that tag, and it's posting that tag to our selected ClearStream database. I'll go ahead and stop this reader at this point. I'm going to go over to the database. And just by this item sitting in front of this antenna, it's being scanned by this virtual RFID reader many, many times and posting them to the access database. So what you'll see is if I go back to the access database and hit refresh, I just read that tag 320 times. Now this is what you'll see in our actual RFID environment if you just leave the tag sitting in front of the RFID reader. You can see it posted to this database 320 times because it was just sitting there. It's just getting scanned over and over again by that reader. And you can see it's been posted here with all of these date timestamps as it was sitting in front of this, in this case, antenna 1. Okay, so that may not be what we want, though. You know, this thing was just sitting in front of this antenna, but we may only want to report it, you know, once or however many times as it's sitting there. We want to control that. Now, in the past, we've said, well, on the database side, you can definitely control that. You can make sure that the database isn't posting all of this tag information because nothing's changed with that item. You know, it's still sitting in front of antenna 1. It's still being read by that. Nothing has really changed. But now with ClearStream 4.1, you can control it at the reader level. So what I'm going to do here is actually go ahead and clear out my access database. Start this from scratch. So I'm going to clear that out. You can see I have no tags again. On the environment side, I just want to move this out of the way. And now I'm going to go ahead and change some of the settings of this reader using the new tag event and moderated tag read feature of 4.1. So go ahead and open up the reader configuration again. I'm going to jump to the tag settings options. This is where the configuration are done. It's down here on the bottom, tag events with moderated tag read. So let's say I want to make it so that I only read an item as it's sitting in front of the antenna, let's say once every 5 seconds. So I don't want to report it because it's sitting there so many times. I just want it once every 5 seconds. So that way I know every 5 seconds this thing's being scanned. It's sitting in front of there, and I'm recording that in the database. You can set this to whatever you'd like. It could be once a day. Maybe you only want to scan it and get a recording of that item sitting in front of the antenna once a day. But that's all configurable by you. Basically, all you need to do is say, I want to turn this feature on, and I'm going to set it to 5 seconds. Now, this is in milliseconds. I'm going to do 5,000. I'm going to report when the tag is visible, and that's the only thing I'm going to change just to show you the difference here. And so now if I close this, save my project, and power this reader up. Now I'm going to take this item. Let me try to get these things. You can see both of them. I'm going to take the RFID tag list table, which is currently empty. I'm going to take the virtual environment. Now I'm going to just sit this thing in front of here. What you'll notice is now as I refresh the database in the background, I'm only getting a tag read once every 5 seconds. You see now I have 2. We count down 5 seconds again. Now I have 3. If I count down 5 seconds again, now I have 4. So you can see I'm controlling how many times I'm getting this tag posted to the database and entered into the database once every 5 seconds based on that moderated tag read. So I'm drastically reducing the amount of reads I'm getting to the database at the reader level, so I don't have to make any changes to the database. And I'm just getting that once every 5 seconds. So that is the simplest setup. Let's go ahead and move this out. Power this down. And we can check our database. So in that time frame, we only got a total of what looks like 7 records posted to the database because I just moderated that tag event, the new tag event, down to once every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, I will get a tag read. And again, you can set that to whatever you'd like. ClearStream will only report the tag to the database based on your setting there. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and clear out this database again and show you some more things that we can do with this. So my database is clear again. We have our item back out of the read zone of our virtual environment. I'm going to go back to the reader settings here. Now one thing I want to do here is actually go ahead and change this. I'm going to turn on this feature called report tags again, only after not visible. So I'm going to turn that on without changing anything else and go ahead and save this. So now what this does is I'm going to power up my reader. The reader's powered up. Go ahead and set this up again so you guys can see. Here's my access database, which is currently empty. Here's my tag. Now what I set there is to report the tag again only if it's not visible. So maybe if the tag is just sitting in front of the antenna, I don't care to read it again because I know nothing has changed with that item. It's still just sitting there. And I only want to get another tag read if it goes away and then comes back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this thing back in front of the read zone of that antenna, refresh our database, and now what you'll see is I have a single tag read for that item. And no matter what now, I'm going to only get a single tag read for that item because it's still sitting in front of the antenna. Because I told ClearStream to say, you only tell me about this thing if it goes away for that length of time and comes back. So I'm only going to get a second read if that happens. So you can see as I'm hitting refresh here, I'm not getting any additional tag reads to the database. It's just because the item now has to leave before ClearStream reports it again. So as I hit refresh, you can see no additional tags. So what I need to do is go over to the simulator here and move this outside of the read zone of that antenna. Now again, it's obviously outside of the field of view of the antenna. I'm not getting any tag reads of the database. I just know the last one that I got was at this time for this item on antenna 1. So I'm going to leave it outside. Now this is based off of the timeout setting that you have. So I have it set to 5 seconds. So this thing needs to leave the field of view of the antenna for at least 5 seconds. So it's been 5 seconds now. So if I go back into the field of view here and put it back into the read zone, I should get a second tag read. Of course I didn't here. As always, these are sneak peeks. Can have issues. Up there it is. So now I got that second tag read. This refresh is probably a little slow. So I got that second tag read to the database, and it's posted as another tag read. So I'm controlling, again, the number of tag reads that are posted to the database based on telling ClearStream to say, hey, don't report this tag unless it goes outside of the field of view of the antenna for at least 5 seconds. Let's go ahead and try that again. So I'm going to move it out, let it sit outside of the field of view for 5 seconds. I have 2 tag reads for that item in the database. It's been 5 seconds, so I'm going to take this item and I'm going to go ahead and move it back into the field of view of the antenna. And now if I go back to the database and hit refresh, I got a 3rd tag read. So you can see I'm only getting tag reads if this thing leaves the field of view and then comes back for the antenna. So it's another additional step that you can control the amount of tag data that's being reported by these fixed RFID readers to your database. So let's take this a little bit further. So I'm going to go ahead and power down my reader. I'm going to go over to the database. I still, again, only have those 3 tags. I'm going to go ahead and hit delete all my tag information. So my database is empty again. Now let's take this a step further. We're going to go back over to configure. We're going to go to the readers. Now one additional thing I want to do is actually report when this tag is not visible. So I not only want to know when it came into the field of view of the antenna, I want to know when it left. So all I have to do is turn on report tag no longer visible. And go ahead and hit close. And this again is based off the timeout setting, so it has to be outside the field of view for that 5 seconds. So I save my project. I'm going to power up the reader. My reader is powered up. My database is currently empty. Okay, just refresh it. My database is empty. Item is sitting here on the shop floor, and it's outside of the antenna. I'm going to put it inside of the antenna. If I hit refresh, I immediately get a tag scan because I have tag visible as a tag event that's being reported to the database. I'm not getting any tag reads because it has to leave again before it comes back. Before I can scan it again, it has to leave the antenna for 5 seconds and come back and be scanned again. So I'm not getting any tag reads. You can see by me hitting refresh here on the database. But now I'm going to take this item and move it outside of the field of view of the antenna. Well, again, it's based off of that timeout, so it's going to take about 5 seconds before the antenna knows it's gone. But I'll refresh my database, and there it is. So there I got another tag read. You can see the peak RSSI is 0 because it didn't technically read that tag. You can see the tag event that's reported and actually is customizable by you. You can see the 2 events. It was tag visible at 10:26:24, and then at 10:26:57, the tag was no longer visible, and it's reported to the database. And as you can see, I got those 2 tag reads for that single item. If I were to go back over to the environment, it's been 5 seconds. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. I got my tag read. You can see it's got the RSSI here for the virtual environment. It came over with the tag event of new tag visible, which again you can customize. You can change that. And then if I go ahead back, I'm not getting any tag reads because it hasn't left. If I go back here and move this thing out after that timeout time, I'll go ahead and refresh my database. And there you can see the tag is no longer visible. So I'm recording how long the item has been in front of that antenna and getting 2 tag events. So you can see here, just from these settings that I've set, you can drastically control how much the tag data that's being sent to your database as opposed to some of the, say, the stuff you've done in ClearStream 4.0 or prior. In those, you'd be setting up these type of rules on the database side, checking the logic of your database or the data in the database before you post the tag. Now this is all controlled at the reader level in ClearStream and reporting those tags to the database. Okay, so maybe we'll do that one more time. Let's take it in. We're going to put that item in front of the antenna. Go ahead and hit refresh. We have a tag read, so we have new tag visible. And then if we go back and move this thing back away, we can go ahead and after that 5 seconds, we'll refresh our database, and now it's ClearStream reports that this tag is gone. So we'll go ahead and hit refresh there. So I went in and out of the field of view of those antennas 3 times. In those 3 times, I got 6 records posted to the database. Each one shows the state of that item. It showed up at this time, left at this time. Showed up at this time, and left at this time. So you can see this would be very good for a setup where you may want to do keeping track of items as they come up to workstations, how long they've been there, how long they're at that location, and getting those two tag events, and not getting a whole bunch of tag events as the tag is sitting there. So you can really control the tags as they're being reported to the database. Okay, so let's go ahead and now take this even further. I'm going to stop my reader. I'm going to clear out my database. Okay, my database is empty. My item has been removed from the antenna, and I'm actually going to change that environment around a little bit for this one. So now let's go ahead and set it up so that, like what I talked about before, we can do a check-in, check-out scenario with custom tag events. So we get it rather than a tag scanned or a tag no longer scanned. We can get a check-in event and a check-out event. So what I'm going to do is let's modify the environment first. So I'm going to set up a stockroom. Let's move these guys around. We'll subtract some floor space. We'll make a stockroom. Just try to make it. Okay, so let's just say on the right-hand side here we have a stockroom. And we want to keep track of the things as they're going in and out of here. So we're going to go ahead and label this stockroom. Maybe this is the shop floor. So showroom, the shop floor. So here's the shop room, and now we want to keep track of items as they go in and out of this this stock room. So I'm going to add an additional antenna to our reader here. You can do as many antennas as you'd like. In real life, you probably want some additional antennas. Let's put this thing on in the side of the stock room for the time being. Okay. So what I want to do here is, I don't care, like, if you have a stockroom set up and you have some items in the stockroom, the item may get scanned by the antenna that's inside of the stockroom, but you don't necessarily care about that because it hasn't done anything. It's just sitting there being scanned. You know it's in the stockroom. You know you have it in inventory. So let's not report on it to the database. You really want to report on it if it goes like this, through these two read zones onto the shop floor, and then maybe through these two read zones back into the stockroom. That, to you, is a tag event. That's the event. It has moved through the portal. So we're going to go ahead and configure that with our custom tag event. So I'm going to go ahead. Here's my area. I have antenna 2 is actually we'll do the check-in antenna, and antenna 1 is the check-out. I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. We're going to go back to our reader configuration. First thing is I need to add an additional antenna. This one is the check. Let's do this one is out, and this antenna is in. Okay, so I'm just naming my antennas based on where they're located in our virtual environment. Now let's go ahead and configure our custom events. So I'm going to turn off, I don't want to report the tag if it's visible. I also don't want to report the tag if it's no longer visible. And I don't care about this here because we're not reporting on these anyway. So I'll turn all of those off. If the tag is just sitting in front of one antenna, don't tell me about it. I don't care. I want to know if it goes past the two antennas. So now I'm going to go ahead, and if I left it actually as this, I would never get a tag event to the database because I've turned off all the events. The tag, as it's going in front of these things, is technically being scanned by the reader, but it wouldn't be reported because I've turned off everything. So this is probably not a useful setup in any case, other than maybe if you wanted to do alerts on the reader and you didn't care about capturing data, you could set something like this up. But I'm going to go ahead now and configure a custom event. In my events, there's going to be two events. The first one will be checked in, and the other one will be check out. Okay, and these events will be made up of each of a different sequence. There'll be two sequences. The antenna field equals, and in the case of checked in, it's going to be out, and then it's going to be in. Both of these will be equals. The check out is going to be the reverse. It's going to be antenna equals in and then out. So these values here just match what my antenna names are. So it's basically saying if the tag hits these two sequences, that the antenna that read it is equal to in, followed by the antenna that read it equals to out, my event, we're going to fire an event there called checkout. In reverse, for the check-in, it's the other way. If antenna out reads it, followed by antenna in, then we're going to report a tag event called check-in. So now let's just make sure I have out and in as my tag. That has to match these values here. But I'm all set. So now I have two custom events that I'm reporting this tag on. It has to go past these antennas in some certain order before it's reported to the database. Let me go ahead and close. I'm going to save my project. Just double check the database again. It's empty. Go over to our beautiful shop floor here. Let me make this so you guys can see it. So now, I have to power my reader up. I'm going to start up. I'll hit start. Here's my shop floor. Here's my database. Okay. So now this item can be sitting in front of this antenna, but we don't care about that. So as I'm refreshing this, there's no tag read to the database because the tag hasn't done anything. So this is another common setup that we have with ClearStream is these check-in, check-out scenarios. And in the past, if there was an antenna on the inside of a stockroom, and let's say it was a small stockroom, the tags in that stockroom could be scanned, hundreds of thousands of times as they're just sitting in front of that stockroom because it's a small stockroom and they have the antenna set up to full power. Now in the past we would say, okay, well that data is getting posted to the database, but it's really just updating the database with the current state of the item. But you're still hitting the database all those number of times. You're updating the database with that information. You don't really care about it because it hasn't changed states. It hasn't gone through that sequence of events of going through the portal. So with this, you're actually controlling that. You're controlling that it has to go through that sequence of events before it's reported to the database. So let's see that. So again, the database is empty. I'm going to take this item and I'm just going to go through these two read zones here. So it goes through. So it's been scanned by this antenna followed by that antenna. If I go over to the database and refresh it, you can see I got a single tag read based on those two antennas that just scanned that tag. And it's been marked in the database, which I have mapped to the tag event field, with the checkout events that I customized in my custom events area. You can see it posted that. So I just customized this to whatever I needed to. Now again, I haven't gone through a lot of this, but the field mappings, I posted that tag event to this tag event field. You guys could post this to whatever you'd like in your database. You could have a current state of your item field in the database, which you would map the custom event to. So it would post current state of your field is current state. It posts the tag event to that current state field called checkout or checked out or whatever you want. So now if you take that in reverse, we'll go back through the portal. It hits the custom events because it was read by both of these antennas. And if I refresh the database, I now have two rows in my database, and you can see it was checked out at 1036. It was checked back in at 1037. So we're not getting tag reads if it's just sitting here. If I can refresh this, I only have those two tag reads. It's only if it goes through the sequence of events through those two antennas. And you can customize this to whatever you'd like. I mean, the most common is probably going to be two antennas or maybe four antennas based on what you have. But it really could be a lot of different things. It could be antennas. It could be readers that read the tag and things like that. You can string together as much of that sequence as you like to capture that data to the database. Okay, so let's take this again a step further. Let's say we want to track that who takes this item out of the stockroom. So I'm going to put the closest tag container I have to a person. I'm going to say this is my employee. I'm going to switch the type to be a shirt. So here's my employee. We don't have a person in this emulator, but I have a question here. I just want to make sure. Okay, I'll get to your questions just at the end of the webinar. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. I don't want any technical difficulties as I'm going through this. Okay, so here's my employee, and here's the item that he happens to be checking out. He or she happens to be checking out. So I'm going to go ahead. The one thing I need to do is set a different tag. So I'm going to call this guy, this guy's employee badge is B100. Okay, so this EPC value on the tag starts with B, and this one is just whatever it is, that long value you already saw here. But the employee badge starts with a B. So let's go ahead and make sure that we track that that guy took out that item. So I'm going to go ahead now and stop my reader again. I'm going to go to the database. I'm going to clear it out. Go ahead and clear that out. So now we have nothing. Now what we can do is go back to our reader configuration. We're going to configure in the custom fields area an additional field to our reader. So we're going to go ahead and hit add a field. We're going to name this field badge. We're going to say that this badge, and try to follow along with me because it's a little tricky to explain, but I'm going to add a field to the database, so to the reader. So every time the reader captures this information, the tag information, you can customize additional fields that the reader captures. There's a standard set of default fields, the EPC, a date timestamp, the signal strength, and things like that. But with as of ClearStream 4.0, you can add custom fields, which can be static values. Maybe every time a tag is scanned, you want to capture, the value 1, 2, 3 in your database. You can do that through custom fields. I'm going to configure that. Excuse me. This reader has an additional field called badge. I'm going to say that this badge comes from a field called from the field EPC, but it's going to be from a moderated tag. So it's going to be from a tag that's sitting in front of the field of view of one of these antennas. It's kind of a within the timeout setting, it's sitting in front of those. I'm going to turn on that it's from those list of tags that the reader currently knows about. The next thing I want to do is set a condition for this. The condition is the tag starts with a B. So basically this means populate the badge field of the reader from a moderated tag, a tag that's in memory for that reader, if it starts with B. And that's going to be this badge value. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and save it. The next thing I need to do is make sure that I map this badge field to a field in the database. So you can see here I have the new field badge. And I'm going to go ahead and set that as a mapped field. So this badge field is mapped to the user field in the destination. So prior to this, every tag that was posted to our Access database, that user field was blank. It wasn't posted with anything. So now what I can do is, now that I have it mapped and it's populated from a moderated tag, a tag that's sitting in memory of the reader, I'm going to post that to the user field. So let's go ahead and save my project here. I'm going to go over to the start stop. I'm going to power up my readers. Now I only can move one item at a time. There's a couple limitations with the simulator to show you. This is actually a cool one to see in, if you actually have a portal set up with a badge tag on a user. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this item. I'm going to move the employee into the read zone of this. Now imagine he has this thing and he's carrying it. Now there's no data being posted to the database because again there's no tag sequence being hit. As well as this badge is not being read because it's going to be assigned to this item. But now let's move this item out through the portal. It goes through the 2 read zones. I'm going to refresh my database. Hit that. There it goes. Okay, so you can see it read the item and it read it with the badge ID of B100 because this guy's tag is sitting in this read zone here. So it's capturing that this employee is sitting in the read zone and it's a moderated tag in the read zone. And so it's assigning it to this package during that custom sequence event there. So if I go back through the read zone, now I will get the read for the check-in. So you can see what I've captured here. I've captured this item was checked out. It was checked out by employee B100 at 10:42:26, and then it was checked back in by that same employee B100 at 10:42:57. So you can see I can capture this tag information by it being in the read zone here, and then send that with the other tag information. One thing to note for this setup here, for anybody that's may have noticed, this can actually still be read by both. It's going to cause a sequence of events if I go through here and then through here. So I will capture a badge 100 based on that. So you can see here I have badge 100 has been checked out. So this guy's checked out. If I go ahead, what I can do there is actually go back to my setup. I'll stop this read, and all I need to do is add a filter. This is new for 4.1 as well. We have a not like filter B%. This basically says any reader here that reads, this reader that reads, as it reads tags, don't send any tags that start with B% as the EPC. So this would limit that from happening. That'll turn off this item from ever being scanned through the read zone and reported as its own tag. It's going to require that it's this item here being checked in or checked out. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to show you guys today for ClearStream 4.1.